Welcome, everybody. We will give it another 5 minutes for people to register. In the meantime, I began to use the Zoom webinar just about 15 days ago. And I remember the difficulty I had in my first webinar, figuring out what is where. So take a few moments. You have a chat where you can pass a message that everybody could see. You could put in question answers, which I will take question answers right at the end. And I will take question answers in two ways. From the question answer box, I will read out the question and the answers, as well as there is at your lower part of your bar, you have the option of raise the hand. When you raise your hand, I see it, yes, as Saili just did. I would then unmute you, and you also need to unmute yourself at that time. And then you can speak your question that will be audible to everybody, and I could give the answer accordingly. If anybody cannot hear, okay, Ruby, you said the audio is not so clear. Is it better now? Please give me an update on the chat about if anybody has a problem with the audio or the video. Is it all okay now? Hi, Sanjukta, good to see you too. Charu, good morning. Yes, can hear, very good. Okay. Right, so some of you are raising the hand. I'm presuming you're trying it out because we'll take the questions at the end. If there's something you do want to say right now, just type it in the chat. I can see it there. Hi, Deepa. Hi, Kajal. Good morning. Devyani, good morning. Trisha, hi. So we just give it about 2 more minutes and we'll be ready to move. Yes, your videos are all off. Trisha was asking, your videos are all off. I've also muted all of you right now. So, so that by mistake, there's no sound. So as of now, you're muted. None of your videos will come on. When we unmute you in the question answer session, when you raise your hand, that's the only point when we can mute you. Hi, Vinod Mama. Hi, Mahesh. Good to see you. Madhuri, good to see you. Hi, Nipa. Dr. Naseem, welcome. Right, it's 11:05, so we are ready to start. We've all been discussing and caught up with the idea of what's going to happen to our health, what's going to happen to our world with this onslaught of the COVID-19 that has completely changed our worldview and our perspective and our lives within a matter of 15 days when it all started, and everything from every different aspect began to change. All of us, perhaps in our lives, would be able to give a PhD thesis, PhD paper on the coronavirus. We read it, we discuss it, we know every little nuance about it. However, what is it that is going to protect us from this virus? While we have spent a lot of time looking at the enemy, seeing its weapons, and understanding the way it is going to attack us, which is very important. But we also need to take out that time to look at our own arsenal. What is our protection? How are our shields? What are the weapons that we have at our disposal to fight this war against the virus or any other virus or organism that may come into the world even in the future? We have very little control over what the virus does, but we have absolute control over our weapons and our immune shield against this entire virus and this epidemic. Our body is an amazing group of different machineries that function in precision and perfection. That is actually a beauty to see. We probably all hated biology in school. But if you would remember, we had this heart, we were shown, we had to appear for exams on it, with 4 chambers, 2 corridors, 4 doors, and the entire heartbeat that maintains our organism in function happens with such a beautiful orchestration within 1 minute. One room chamber contracts, its door opens. The other one relaxes, its door closes. As this cycle continues, the door that first contracted now relaxes. That gate shuts, this one contracts, the other one closes. This entire door open, which one closes, which one shuts, how much should it contract to push the blood, is all perfectly regulated with timing, with exact levels. The level of contraction of this muscle is our top blood pressure. The level of relaxation and where the blood comes into this heart chamber is the lower blood pressure. The heartbeat gives us the number of times this happens. And when you look at the precision and the number of times it's happening in our lives, I'm surprised it doesn't fail more often than it does. And the reason it doesn't fail is because we have inbuilt within us an amazing computer program like situation that maintains all these machineries in super function. One of these machineries is our immune system. Our immune system, which is our white blood cells, are our security officer. Their job is not to allow any substance that can harm our body to enter, which means bacteria, which means viruses, which means fungi, which means parasites, which means any kind of foreign living cell, even another organ. If it enters and can create trouble, our white blood cells stand there ready to throw it out. These white blood cells have many receptors. Many of them we haven't even used. They have the ability to produce a chemical, the antibody, that goes and gets attracted to the organism, the foreign invader, and destroys it. It also has cells that actually go and eat up all these bacteria, fungi, and foreign cells that come in. We have a beautifully coordinated physical attack and chemical attack warfare against any of these organisms that dare to attempt to enter our system. And the way this machine is programmed is a very simple program. The program is a yes and no program. Every cell in our body, my cells, have a particular mark, an antigen marker, which makes it the same. Every cell in your body has a different kind of, like a rectangle or a triangle, for example, that makes it an identification for your cell. My white blood cells are programmed from birth genetically to recognize my cells as self, and any other cell that attempts to enter my body as other or alien or foreign and attack it and get it out. It doesn't matter to this white blood cell, our security officer, whether it is then a virus, a bacteria, a fungi, or another living organism cell. Its program is chuck it out. And thus, it doesn't matter how many new viruses, how many new bacteria can mutate and form, our program can work for all of them. It is an amazing, efficient kind of program. This program and this functioning of all our different machineries were perhaps attuned and perfected from the time that we were the primitive man. The primitive man that lived in the jungle had to be constantly aware and constantly alert for all the dangers lurking. Any moment there could be a tiger, any moment a snake, something wild that can attack him at that moment. And the response he needed to have was a fight and flight instantaneous response. This fight and flight instantaneous response that would happen with a sound of a rustle of a snake, or the visual of seeing a snake or hearing a roar or the smell of fire. This automatically triggers the computer program that is inbuilt in our brain. Our mammalian brain has this inbuilt program for survival. And this is coordinated by an don't get worried with the complicated sounding names. It's the hypothalamus, which is in the brain, the gland, which is also in the brain, and the adrenal gland, which sits on top of our kidneys. So the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis is what the primitive animals like reptiles, mammals, as well as primitive man, as well as we have. And this allows us to survive in any form of threat. Any of this threat is like a stressor. This stressor instantly triggers this entire axis, and we release in our body natural cortisol that helps us cope instantly with this situation. And the way that we would cope with this situation is we need to run, so we need energy in our muscles. For that energy, we need blood to go there. We need sugar to go there as fuel, and we need oxygen to burn this fuel into energy. And thus, not only does it trigger the cortisol, but the brain also triggers our sympathetic nervous system, the other part of our nervous system that functions by itself and releases adrenaline. As this adrenaline rush happens, we begin to breathe faster so that more oxygen goes in. Our heart beats faster, our blood pressure shoots up so that blood can go to the muscles that need it quickly. and we move into this instant fight and flight reaction. Our hands become cold so that the blood doesn't go to the hands and legs and the periphery where it's not needed, but it's diverted into the muscles, into the heart, which need it primarily at that time. This super efficient mechanism allowed us to survive, to evolve, and to stay despite multiple changes in the universe. Dinosaurs became extinct, other animals became extinct. We evolved and remained because we have this super efficient mechanism. Now, as we evolved further, we evolved into the Homo from the mammal to this human. This human, this Homo sapien now has also another part of the brain, apart from the old brain which mammals have. The reptilian brain, which is even older, we now have this new little part in the brain called the neocortex that makes us unique. We can think, we can ideate, we can plan. We no longer have to act just as a reflex that is pre-programmed. The reptilian part of the brain is pre-programmed body functions, how to control the sugars, how to control the sodium, how to control the cholesterol. It's a pre-program. We can't do anything about it. The mammalian kind of brain records memories. So a child is born in the wild, the primitive child, and he learns that this sound, this picture is a dangerous picture. It's a tiger, run from it. He learns that that sound is something you need to run away from. He learns that visual where it's dark and there's a lot of grasses around is an area you need to be alert, because this is where the lions usually hide when they stalk the prey. So the imprint of a visual, the smell, the tastes, the of areas to pre-correct ourselves and protect ourselves. So a child in the wild, as he learns that there is a tiger here, that there is a lion here, this is a snake, he learns to already be prepared when he enters that area so that he can already be ready to run and be even more efficient. This memory imprint is done by this old mammal brain. Again, it happens automatically. It's not in our control. It's a pre-program coming from evolutionary times and nothing we can do about it. But this neocortex, this frontal part of the brain, is unique in that it is in our control. We decide and hence do an action. We decide to run and run. We decide to stop and we stop. It's that which allows us to plan, think into the future, and create something beyond just that reflex. Our world, though, our jungle, though, is different now. Its onslaught of dangerous things around us are even more. They are just different. And as we have this onslaught in this new jungle of coronavirus on one hand, your child's exam on the other, whether the university is going to open, what's going to happen to your financial situation, what's going to happen to your taxes, what's going to happen to this government. As every little thing comes and creates this onslaught of terror and stress, the problem is that we have not had the time to develop any new program to separately handle this stress. This program to survive in the wild, fight and flight, developed over many years, got perfected over many years, But suddenly, this Homo sapien and this technological world has happened very quickly within a few hundred years. Enough time for the brain circuits to evolve enough to give us a separate response for when you have to appear for an exam and you're stressed, or when your child has to speak on stage and you're stressed, or when there is an infection and you're stressed, or when the stock market collapses and you're stressed, or your boss doesn't like you and you're stressed. Each of these different stresses in today's jungle don't have a separate neural circuit. What we have is that same neural circuit, that same fight and flight response, the same hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis that in the presence of any of these stresses instantly raises our blood pressure, makes us breathe, our pulse rate go up, we feel the palpitation, and floods our system with sugar. The problem is that in the wild, this sugar was used because we would run, we would burn this fuel, we would use this oxygen, and then we would stop and rest. Either the tiger gets you or you escape. This fight and this flight doesn't go on forever. Either you die or escape, there is an end. But the situations of stress in our jungle, in our modern jungle, have no end. One day it's the exam, the next day the infection, the third day your tax, the fourth day something else. It's a non-stop volley that is constantly triggering our hypothalamic adrenal axis and constantly resulting in a raised blood pressure, a raised sugar, which continues to stay in our system because we aren't really running and using it. We are stressing, but we aren't using all that sugar. And thus, the biggest worry in today's world before coronavirus came in was lifestyle diseases, blood pressure, diabetes. Everybody at younger ages and even more younger ages is falling prey to these diseases. And the reason is simple. As this onslaught of stress continues, we keep constantly triggering this access and keep flooding our system with sugar and pushing the blood pressure high until it continuously stays at that particular moment because the program has got busted. It was not meant to function like this. It was meant to function in short bursts. You're in the jungle, it's lovely, you have fruits, you have a lovely sunshine, you have birds, and once in a while there would be this tiger or snake which you had to escape from, where you put all your energies and your efforts, run this marathon and get out of it. It is not programmed to do this constantly. And hence, this system and its end organs are failing with diabetes, blood pressure, high cholesterol in our system that's continuously happening. So, then what is this solution to this? Can we not do something about it? Are we just going to be helpless victims to this? And the answer is no, because as this pre programmed fight and flight response continues, and it's coming from our automatic part of our brain, the brain, we have also developed this new cortical brain, as I told you, the very human brain. And this cortical brain has the unique ability of inhibiting our pre-programmed reflexes. In other words, every reflex action that exists as a program in our automatic brain has a neuron, and this is what our brain is made up of. Multiple of these beautiful looking structures that join one with each other, one to another, another to the other, other to the other, other to the other, until they form a program. So the run program will have the breathing neuron, breathe faster, the heartbeat neuron, the muscle contraction neuron, the mouth getting dry and the fingers and hands getting cold, the eyes dilating so you can see things better. All this the 1, 2, 3, many neurons joining to form an electrical circuit. And you also see here, each neuron doesn't end in one end. So it doesn't join only with one. It can join with many others. At the same time, many others can join to it because it has so many branches. In other words, our brain is full of multiple wires joining to each other and wires in parallel circuits, series circuits, so many of them. That's what our brain matter is, and that's how it functions. This inhibitory neuron, which comes from our neocortex, the new part of the brain, and comes into these pre-programmed circuits, is by its very nature inhibitory. The chemical that it produces when it touches the other neuron, the chemical release there stops this circuit. It's a circuit breaker. It breaks this circuit, which is why the natural mammalian reptilian survival instinct is in hot water, boiling hot water, you pull it out. If you come towards fire, every animal who will run away from it. Yet, we as human beings can decide, I want to show you how strong I am, and hence I will keep my hand in this water. I will not pull it out. I can fire because I can decide and choose how I will walk so that I will not get injured and that I can continue to do that. So we can supersede this primitive computer programming, primitive not because of its function, but it's simply old, by deciding that we are going to change it. In other words, when you say, I'm going to relax, I'm not going to be stressed anymore, or you logicize and you say, okay, things are going to get better. You learn things, we read things. That's why we're reading. We're reading and passing information because we hope that we will get information in our cortical brain through which we can inhibit all the pathways, that stress hypothalamic adrenal axis that has constantly been running in all of us for the last 3 months. Using this is something we are all able to do, and we can do it and tell ourselves now is the time to relax. Give yourself a moment to get away from that adrenal axis running. How do we do it? Sometimes the mind is constantly running, doesn't let you stop. And here is the beautiful interplay between these two parts of the brain, the thinking brain, the cortex, and this automatic pre-programmed brain. This one thought and function, thought and action. This one takes inputs from your five senses, the visuals, the smell, the taste, the sounds, and passes it into this automatic brain. Work separately in their own complete different ways. The primitive man had only this brain. His full attention was on this. He had to put his full attention on the five senses. In around, his survival depended on it. Jungle needs us to analyze, think, do actions that can prove we are better than others. That's our survival. Shift to this cortical thinking brain constantly, which is why when it is thinking, vibrating with that thought and then passing all the stress into this axis, we are unable to stop it. One little trick is simply focus on breathing help. Breathing simply helps because it plays on the difference between your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. The point here is that you see, think of, oh, emotion, oh, angry, oh, anxiety, oh, fear, the play of your neuron. The play of the neurons, you can shift them, play with them, make different connections and do what you like. The sympathetic nervous system is the one I told you is the adrenal one that goes into the fight and flight reaction, along with the glucose, the cortisol that is, we are anxious and stressed. The adrenal gland and the sympathetic nervous system also produces the adrenaline, which has this, come on, move, come on, breathe faster. The opposite of that, parasympathetic nervous system, the vagus nerve, is what is called the slow down, the feed and breed. This is called fight and flight. This is called feed and breed. This is the one that brings everything to a baseline. It's the calm mode, the relaxed mode, the be with people mode, right? The survival by being in society mode. And the way to stimulate this parasympathetic is to slow your breathing. The moment we concentrate on our breathing, and what we are doing is stimulate parasympathetic. As we stimulate this parasympathetic nervous system, it overrides the sympathetic, and not only does our breathing slow down, but our blood pressure will come down, our pulse rate will come down, we'll give a break from this adrenal fight and flight reaction coming down to baseline level, which is what the primitive man always had, but we don't have. So as we simply take a few minutes to stimulate our parasympathetic system few times of the day, bring our adrenaline to a baseline and this constant onslaught, which is a problem. However, there will still be times that we'll notice that everything, people will say, I've done everything. I meditate, I exercise, I eat the right food, I listen to music times a day. I mean, all the things to calm myself, I do my breathing. And it feels like you have everything under your control. And you're not stressed and you're fine and everything's good. But suddenly something really small, something really insignificant seems to happen and we lose it. The big things are happening. We're fine. We have already inhibited it. We have said, this is okay. Stock market is collapsing, will come. Falling sick, but this will pass. There have been deaths, this will pass too. Don't worry, it's only one exam. We tell ourselves and we are able to inhibit this. We meditate, we are able to get rid of that stress, yet we'd be sitting somewhere and suddenly something really small will happen. Or you're driving a car and somebody just quickly goes past you and zoop, suddenly something seems to happen. You either go into a panic reaction, fear, anxiety, heartbeat is beating again, or you're in anger mode, which is but the same thing. The anger, the aggression is the opposite of the flight. It's the fight, which is also about palpitations, blood pressure. And now we are angry and we completely lose our total thought process. We are completely out of our control. This is what is called the amygdala hijack, the limbic, the old mammal part of the brain, as I told you, overrides and hijacks your thinking brain completely, and you're not able to control yourself. These are those moments when, after it's over, and it takes a long time, where you can feel the effect on your body, you feel weak after that, you feel sick, there's a bad taste in your mouth, you feel exhausted, you feel completely drained out, and you feel like, why did I do this? Sometimes you even go and apologize because you reacted to something in a way that seemed completely out of proportion. So, what's happening here? Why is it that we are exerting this and still am not able to control my anxiety, not able to control my patterns of behavior, and not control my blood pressure and diabetes? There are so many people who will tell you, see, they eat right, they're exercising, they're doing everything perfect. And yet, there's blood pressure, there's diabetes, the cholesterol's high, there's cancer. What's happening then? What is it that then we are not seeing? What is it we are not able to then control, which is creating this set of problems? And that's really what I'm talking about. Therefore, the topic here today was going beyond meditation, diet, exercise, because that's where we are using our thinking conscious brain to control this overexcited fight and flight primitive response that happens with the presence of any kind of stress. If your mate doesn't come or the stock market collapses, this hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis cannot tell the difference. It's going to stimulate in exactly the same way. So, what then is it that we are not able to control, even though we've tried to control all these other things? What is it that is creating this amygdala hijack, totally taking over our thinking process for that time? We are unable to use our thinking, let alone inhibit something. Our rationality, our thinking completely stops. And to explain what happens there, I will tell you another very interesting story. It's the story, I call it the story of the peach. This is the story of a patient that went through a very traumatic time in her life. At this point in her life, she, okay, I'm getting something that the network is bad. Is that a little better? I mean, is the network a little better? I hope now. All right. So there will also be a recording, which we will make sure we give to all of you. So what? Okay, if that continues to happen, I will shift the network. But as of now, let's hope it'll be fine. So the as this patient went through a very traumatic episode in her life where she lost her son, was involved in a very serious accident. At this point, he was in the hospital in the ICU for up to a year. In the beginning, they didn't know whether he will live. Then they didn't know whether he will be a vegetable. Then they didn't know whether he will be handicapped. Finally, of course, the son was fine. But this year was one of tremendous physical and emotional trauma that she underwent. Peach allergy. The allergy to the fruit peach, which she would eat and break out into hives, get an angioneurotic edema. So whenever it's unstable, I'll pause and start again. And she would develop angioneurotic edema and get into these situations with hives. Even if the fruit was cut in the other room, or even if the knife used to cut her apple was the same as the one used to cut the peach. She knew that she never had this peach allergy before this traumatic incident, and that this would have happened only after this trauma. Hence, she used her thinking process. She used her intellectual cortical inhibition and went for counseling to try to sort this problem out, to say what's happening, how can I deal with my trauma, how can I get over this anxiety, fear, and this whole episode that happened. So she did this with a full conscious awareness, despite number of such therapeutic sessions, number of such different things that she tried. The peach allergy didn't go. She finally decided she has to live with it. There is nothing more she can do. The rest of her was better. She had healed emotionally. She seemed to be out of that fear and panic and depressed situation of life. But the peach allergy continued to stay. Years later, she was in a workshop session where a therapist used her as a model to explain something. And what he did is he asked her to relive that moment in her life where she first received the information that her son was sick or son had an accident. She created for the audience in that room the actual visual of the room, because every incident in our life, especially the significant ones, but even the small insignificant ones, are recorded in that limbic system, that old mammal brain of ours, whose job was to recognize areas. So you would know this is a safe area, this is not a safe area, this is the area we can go to. And this limbic system records every scene of the movie of our life, like Instagram photographs or short YouTube video clips. This has been proved by experimentation in patients of brain surgeries that was done in Harvard and other medical institutions. And this limbic system, therefore, records unedited the entire movie of our life as different scenes, not following a logical sequence. It doesn't go day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. It's random, but it's all put out there like in the form of neural circuits. Every scene has a neural circuit to it. And he accessed, by talking to her through the five senses, that memory in that limbic system, where she now saw the entire visual in front of us. When we think about it and talk about it from our cortical brain, we only talk about the important thing. There was an accident. I got the news. He was in this hospital. This happened. This part of the brain is a corporate brain. It works on important points. It takes the main theme, makes a summary event. But this part of the brain, the old brain, which is trained to live out in the jungle, not in a corporate world, takes every little thing from the side, because you don't know in which corner the tiger is hiding. You don't know where the snake's rustling sound will come from. So you have to take all input from the periphery. In other words, it gets recorded like a 5D movie in the limbic system of the brain. When this visual was stimulated in this patient, and she described this room with the yellow walls, the blue sofa where she was sitting with her legs in the front, the phone, the old black dial phone, which was lying far away. And she is reading a coffee book when the phone bell rings, and she gets up to pick up that phone. She puts the book aside and walks to the phone, holding that phone with her left hand, because in the right hand, at this moment, she was eating a peach. As this scene emerged, there was stunned silence in that room. So the question arises, are we saying that that peach in that scene where she hears this emotionally wrought incident that your son is involved in a bad accident, we don't know whether he will live, that peach is somehow got transferred the entire emotion and the chemicals that are being produced as a result of that trauma. This sounds completely absurd. It sounds like crazy witchcraft stuff. What's happening here? However, this isn't witchcraft. It is simply understanding the working of the brain as Pavlov showed it years ago. The Russian scientist Pavlov showed that you can induce the same salivation in a dog, which he should naturally get only with food. This is the pre-programmed neural circuit in this automatic brain, where every living organism, when shown food, will salivate and start his entire digestive machinery as an efficient form of functioning. What he did is, every time just before he gave the food, he rang a bell. Food bell continued for about number of days. And then he removed the food and only rang the bell. And the dog still salivated and continued to do it for a number of days after that. Today, neuroscience fully understands that what happened then was that this existing neural circuit got corrupted. The existing one should have simply been food, digestive reflex. But this bell, simply because it was happening in the same area, and our limbic system is trained to match the area with the event happening. The limbic system is trained that if a tiger is there, the grass is associated with the tiger. But unfortunately, this neural connection continues even in our world today, where the two things may not be connected because the neurons haven't changed their way of functioning yet. And therefore, now this original circuit becomes a new corrupted program circuit where there's a dog, there's food, but there's a bell too. And now you can induce the same salivation whether you ring the bell or whether you show the food. That happened with the peach, because as the person was having the peach at the same moment as she hears this emotional moment and chemicals flood her brain, her body, resulting in the different changes in her body, this peach gets into this circuit. The correct logical circuit will be hearing about the accident resulting in all these chemical things in the body. But this peach, because of the way the limbic system works, the nervous system in that part works, is now part of it. So hence, whenever the person sees a peach in live it triggers that same old movie in the brain, that old DVD circuit, that neural circuit fully starts playing again as if it's happening now, where the story is happening, you're hearing the accent, emotions are coming. And therefore, that peach in this person triggered this kind of a response. Pavlovian experiments were then continued in a very interesting manner by Adler and Cohen. Adler was a neuroscientist and Cohen a psychologist. What they were simply taking this same Pavlovian behavior and trying to see if they could replicate it. So what they did is they took these rats and they gave them a drug which is used for anti-cancer drug, which creates a lot of nausea and vomiting. This drug is an immunosuppressant used for anti-cancer therapy, and it causes the side effect of a lot of nausea. So what they did is they gave the rats this drug. But before they gave this rat the drug, they would give them a little sugar, saccharine. So when the rats were first given the saccharine plain by itself, they thoroughly enjoyed the saccharine. As this saccharine was followed by this drug, cyclophosphamide, which created this awful sick feeling, and this was repeated again and again, after some repetitions, when only the saccharine was given to the rat, they refused to have this saccharine. Even though it was repeated again and again, and there was no nausea happening, they completely refused it. Thus, were trying to show that Pavlov was right and that behaviors can be modified by things associated with it. Even though the saccharine by itself doesn't cause the nausea, it gets part of the same circuit and the brain can't tell the difference. Whether it's the cyclophosphamide or the saccharine, it's going to get that same, yuck, I don't want to have this kind of reaction. But then what happened, as often happens in science, some of the biggest leaps happen when you're not looking for them. Suddenly they noticed that some of the rats whom they were giving a lot more of the saccharine, they were trying to give them more, thinking, if I give it more, maybe he'll break that cycle. Many of them, given this saccharine, died. And they couldn't understand what happened. Until one of them thought, should we check the immune cells here? Because cyclophosphamide is a strong immunosuppressant. It brings down the action of the body's immunity. And when they tested, they found that not only did it change the behavior, but the saccharine could now induce the same immunosuppression that cyclophosphamide did. We can understand in some ways that behavior can get modified. We can also think that maybe our logical brain is making the connection and saying, well, these two things were together, maybe that's why I don't like to do it. But what is very interesting, that the immune cell function, which we can't see, we can't look at, we can't even touch, that's getting altered by a simple association of a substance that is completely innocuous. Saccharine, when given to a rat, creates no change in an immune function. Saccharine, when given with this drug, which drops the immunity, it brings down the function of the immunity, now becomes associated in the same circuit. And thus, later on in life, when you give this rat only saccharine, it triggers that same old reflex which is imprinted in that limbic system, and his immune cells dropped and the rats died with it. This then tells us that apart from the stuff that we know, that we are focusing on, that stress, and stress causes health problems, there is things in the periphery, small little things that have no meaning, that have no action by themselves, but trigger something else within us, affecting our health and immunity because of pre-programming. In other words, every time you've lost it because of some silly small thing which isn't even important, which has no meaning, and you say, why did I lose it? Why did I completely get so angry? This is such a small, insignificant thing. It's because that insignificant thing is triggering this inner circuit, which is pre-programmed, and your reactions are coming from that inner circuit, not from this actual thing. It's like being in two movie theaters, PVR 5 and 4. You're looking at PVR 5 and you're thinking that your reactions are coming from this movie you're watching, but your reactions are actually coming from the movie that is being watched by your limbic system, by this other automatic part of your brain, which is in the other part of the screen. Taking this even one step further, because scientists don't stop, then the question was, but this rat or whatever living organism knew about this saccharine, right? You were consciously aware that you were having this saccharine. What if you were not aware of it? And what they did here is They now anesthetized the animal and then conditioned it, which means they completely analgesied and anesthetized and sedated the rat and did the same experiment, which means they gave this sedated rat first saccharine. And he has no clue now because he's completely under anesthesia. And they measured immune response, no immune response. Then this group of rats under anesthesia is given saccharine followed by cyclophosphamide. Naturally, the cyclophosphamide causes a drop in the immune recorded. Then at a later point, these anesthetized, analgesized, sedated rats are given plain saccharine, the same group of rats, without the cyclophosphamide. And the same drop, actually a little more, in the immune cells, same intensity and number is noted. In other words, our immune system is not just affected by the things we know. It is affected by the things that we don't know. And that's what we need to control. That's when we don't have the control and we lose it. The cortical brain functions efficiently by retaining only important things. So it can plan and do other stuff. Whereas this one, which was pre-programmed, takes in everything. And hence, when we put our attention here, there's a lot this cortical brain doesn't know, doesn't remember. At this moment, you'd remember the talk we had. Years later, we could talk and you'd say there was a webinar and there was a talk, but you wouldn't remember that there was a blue cushion and an orange lamp there, except now when I'm pointing it out to you. But if we triggered this memory in your limbic system, you would see this entire room with the orange lamp and that blue pillow exactly as it is, because it's a photo album, that neuron circuit that just brings out as a visual. We've all had this experience. Sometimes you're talking and you get a flashback. You say, "Arey, remember when I was 10 years old, there was this house and in that we had eaten that kheer and it was so nice. And there was this dog and he was like all hair coming out, and you can see everything like it's happening right now." That's when you're accessing your limbic memory. These limbic memories, these circuits happen because they are important for us. They form constantly as a method of not only just controlling our body function, which is pre-programmed, our survival pre-programmed, but for learning new things. When we learn how to talk, walk, cycle, swim, whatever we do is simply because the neurons are joining with each other and forming a new circuitous response. And as we practice it few times, it becomes a strengthened circuit. And now you just start one, the entire circuit runs. When we are born, we don't know how to walk. We your right leg and your left hand. This gets formed into a circuit. Which leg, which hand, which is raised, how much, heel is up, heel is down. This entire little detail is part of this neural circuit. When we move one leg forward and begin to walk, we automatically trigger that entire thing, and we don't have to focus on how are we going to walk. When we look at a dog and we are taught as a kid, this is a dog, we learn it because one neuron registers the sound woof, which is then stored in a part of our brain. Then another registers a triangle face, which is also stored and connected to the woof. Then another notices the texture and appearance of the fur, two neurons. These two are also connected to this circuit. Entire neuronal connection eventually results in the word. As this is repeated again and again and again, it becomes a firmed circuit. And when you trigger any two things of this, the entire circuit automatically triggers without you having to put any focus or attention on it. This brain is so efficient because we can keep learning new things. It's not like we have one neuron for dog, one for cat, one for ice cream, because then there would be a limit, right? There would be a point your hard drive would be full and it couldn't store any more information. So brilliantly, each object is broken up into pieces of a jigsaw puzzle: the triangle shape, the fur, the woof sound, the tail, the forelegs. Now, each of these pieces can be used for different things. The triangle shape can join with a pyramid as well. It can join with your compass and become a set square, part of a set square circuit. So this breaking up of pieces of objects into like pieces of jigsaw puzzles and then allowing them to be put together in the form of a neural circuit allows you the efficiency of unlimited learning. Any new thing that comes in the world, we can still learn because we have to take one piece from one neuron, another neuron, and another circuit forms. Remember, I told you the neuron has the capacity of multiple connections, and thus one neuron can be part of the dog circuit, part of a pyramid circuit, part of the set square circuit, and part of other triangle thing circuits at the same time. It's what else it's triggered off into that eventually gives us that visual or that experience of the actual object. It's interesting that if you know what parts of the neurons are triggered in your brain to, for example, see a rose, right? If I know that it's these four neurons to trigger, it's the rose circuit, right? As a person, into his brain and I trigger the same four neurons exactly, he will as if see in front of him that exact picture of the rose and be able to draw, paint, and describe it to you. In other words, seeing, hear, smell, it's not a function of these external organs. They only pass information. The actual putting it together and see is a function of this automatic brain that does it in pieces of this jigsaw puzzle. What then happens here? What does this mean to immunity? What it means, therefore, like I said to you, I was showing you how and a scene can break up into pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, as I'm showing you here. But what this means that, therefore, in a moment of life, especially childhood, because childhood is where we are constantly forming new circuits. New different forms of circuits are forming because we're learning. We have no, as yet, we don't know stuff. We don't have the knowledge. So we're learning what this is, what language is, what things are, what's the world around. And in today's generation, the onslaught of new things is so much more. We're learning new places, new objects, new games, new things, new movies. Everything is a new circuit. As we grow older, we are simply utilizing those same circuits. And therefore, the circuit is most sensitive to getting corrupted in childhood. And therefore, I'm giving you an example, for example. A person in childhood was bullied. You see this boy in the center, somebody is choke holding him in the neck, another one's holding his hand. He would be very, very emotionally stressed, couldn't breathe, be choked at this particular time, be helpless, be frustrated, doesn't know what to do. This entire event of his frustration, his being bullied, the person bullying him, the part that I've shown with the circle, is stored in the memory of our cortex or our thinking brain. Everything else in the periphery, on the side of this circle, is also being stored in our brain. but it is being stored in the limbic part of our brain, which is noting the yellow skateboard, the red skateboard, this beige colored this yellow board, this blue board, this blue jacket, every little insignificant part. When I say insignificant, because this boy is significant, he's the one who's choking him. The hand around the neck is significant. It's the actual effect of the choke. This all is just something that happens to be there in the surrounding. But because the limbic system is trained to match surrounding with the object and the threat inside, the objects in this surrounding are linked in a neural circuit to choke, to threat, to fear, to aggression. And the entire neural circuit, therefore, will be choking, bullying, breathlessness, but also the name of this guy, whatever it is, also this yellow skateboard, the blue jacket, this beige jacket, the blue notice board, which really have nothing to do with the event at all. And therefore, years later, suddenly, this person could be stepping out of his house, and suddenly a yellow skateboard guy, kid, kind of zooms past him and he loses it. What the hell do you think you're doing? Can't you see where you're going? You useless kids. Around him is kind of looking at one to him. Eyes up, his blood pressure is up. He reacts, just kind of roaming around, normal thing, and he doesn't know. He has no idea what has triggered this absolutely high blood pressure, eyes bulging, almost having a aneurysm rupture in his head moment in his life. And then he doesn't know what's happening, another problem occurs. This thinking, conscious brain has this ability to make up stories. Making up stories is what has caused the human being to be what he is, to progress in the way we have. This cortical brain has this unique ability to imagine and project stuff. So, for example, we made Star Trek years ago, right? And years later, Star Trek today is a reality. This generation, our generation, was brought up on Star Trek. It was the height of science fiction for us. Today, Star Trek the height of science fiction, because going to another planet has become like a normal thing. It's not fiction any longer. And this ability to make up stories is what is called in neuroscience. And then continue to use it in a situation where we've walked out on the street and this yellow skateboard has whizzed past this particular guy, and this skateboard him has actually triggered in his limbic system this movie, with which is the emotion, the chemicals that are produced in the body and the results of that. But he can't see it because he's not looking at it. He's only focusing at this outside movie, and his conscious brain is thinking, what the hell is happening around here? And then he confabulates. He makes that person could have come and he could have killed my mother, injured my old mother who's walking next to me, and that's why I lose it. I'm a very responsible person. I love my mother and I want to take care of her, and these kids must learn manners. In other words, when situations like this happen, and all the time in our lives, there is some insignificant, silly thing in the periphery that is actually triggering a complete, crazy, emotional, and therefore chemical response, which means at that time, we have this complete, okay, the screen was blanked out. Is it back now? Whatever reason, are you now able to see the screen? Okay, doesn't matter. I'm sorry, for some reason, the transmissions, the connection, the records are, the Wi-Fi network is a bit bad, but as long as you can hear me, looking at me is unimportant, right? So every little moment in our life where there are these little things that happen in the periphery that trigger some kind of an extreme reaction in us, in our behavior, and hence in our blood pressure, and hence in the functioning of our immune system. Every time we trigger this hypothalamic adrenal axis by creating this rise in the blood pressure, by creating this eyes bulging, breathing hard, we are also depressing our immune function. This is efficient because when in the jungle you have to run from the tiger, you want to put all the energy, all the glucose, all the action towards running from the tiger. You don't need immune function at that time. So for that short time, the brain shuts off the immune function every time the hypothalamic adrenal, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis is triggered by stress, by anger, by losing it. We shut off our immune system. Now, this worked beautifully when we were in the wild, because then this would happen in short bursts when we needed it, when we had to run from the tiger. Because at that time, you needed to run from the tiger. Immune system happening or not happening is not important. You have to live. But now, where our stresses are constant, we are constantly shutting off our immune system. And here danger. For we are today in the world where the existence of this coronavirus has brought to our notice and brought to our forefront how important our immunity is. It's at this moment, it's like our only shield against this onslaught of virus around us. And yet, the very reaction that we have to this virus is constantly shutting our immunity. For when we go into panic and say, now what's going to happen? Now what's going to happen? Oh, now she has it. This neighbor's house, they've got a virus. Don't talk to them. Call them and yell at them. Why are they stepping out of the house? Make sure that nobody comes out. We keep sending them messages. Don't step out. Did you do this? Do this. Not only are we shutting their immune response, we're shutting our own immune response. And therefore, the recognition that when we react to things, either in the conscious recognition, we shut immunity, but also more important, when there are things that happen in the periphery that simply trigger an old DVD playing in our brain, the old neurocircuit, we are responding in exactly the same way, and we are blaming it on something in the outside. It's very easy to find something in the world which is wrong because there's something wrong all the time. So every time we react out of some circuit which is replaying from our childhood circuit, we can always look on the outside through our cortical brain and say, that guy doesn't know what to do. That person doesn't know what to do. There's always something that we find. And that's what we do. We confabulate. So for example, that particular person whose behavior puts you off completely, to the point where you've always said, when I look at her, something happens to me. You know, sometimes when you have these people you don't like, this is a sentence some of us say, when I look at her, something happens to me. This should set out your warning signals. This should tell you, aha, if something you're seeing in her is putting you off, that perhaps is where it originally came from. Maybe as a kid, some huge, very affectionate fellow with an awful looking nose hugged you and, you know, thought was showing love, but you couldn't breathe. You didn't know different. And you thought panic, scared, threat response. And now years later, you see somebody with the same kind of nose and you say, I don't like this person. I have a gut response to this person. I get a negative vibe from this person. She's evil. She's bad. He's bad. And we find multiple reasons because nobody is perfect, right? You can find 100 things to say to people, right? About people, which is not good. And we explain our overreaction or our behavior on those problems of the person. Whereas actually our entire emotional, chemical, and immune suppression that's occurring is coming purely scenario with. What to do about this? We know that if we know we are stressed in a conscious manner, I'm stopping because there's a little internet saying it's low and I'm coming back. When there's something consciously happening, we know we can breathe and it will go away. But what if there is something that's happening in the background, like a skateboard, and I don't know about it? I'm not constantly going through these imprints. Homeopathy, we are figuring out what has gone wrong in that inner programming that is corrupted the natural proper function, and we are setting it right with the remedy. But can you do this in other ways? Can you recognize it and see it for yourself once you understand the way the brain functions? Yes, you can. And how do you do it? Just watch yourself. What do you watch? You watch for those moments of extreme overreaction. In moments when your reaction is over, where you are like, completely overwrought and you're breathing and you're completely involved in this emotional response, stop, even if it's after that, and look around you. Don't allow your cortical brain to confabulate and give you a reason. Don't allow it to do that. Inhibit that response instantly. When it says that, oh, you only reacted because, the world is so bad and people doing unjust things, stop it. Stop that response. Because when there is injustice, you think, you coolly, calmly, collectedly take actions against it. You get angry, but within proportion to the response. When your response is so overwrought that you can't even breathe at that minute, then you know that this is not coming from here. It's coming from somewhere else. Take a moment to look in the surroundings around you. Put your attention onto the five senses at that time. And as you put your attention to the five senses and keep doing this over time, suddenly you will automatically get a flashback. It'll remind you, oh my God, this scene in childhood. This is what happened at that time. And suddenly you'll be able to see that link of something in the periphery, which has nothing to do really with the object, but triggers the same response. A patient of mine whom I learned in the follow-up from, when she was taking the homeopathic remedy, in one follow-up, she told me that, I'd always told you that I am allergic to cardamom. Whenever she would eat cardamom in anything, right, she would vomit and she would throw up. She, even if she didn't know that there was cardamom in some food, as she would, if she was given it, she would just throw up. We know this now, that you don't know it. It just triggers this old response that's within her. And then she said, as I was sitting, my grandmother was not well, and I was sitting outside the ICU. Yeah, so I'm getting a chat which is saying the presentation is freezing and therefore we are missing the talk. And I'm really sorry. I really don't know what to do about it. It's something happening automatically, not in my control. However, I will share the entire presentation as it is with you. We will share it with all of you. So whatever you've missed, you will hear it. You can also ask me in the question answer session. So as this patient told me in the follow-up, she said that, you remember, I always told you how I would react and I would be allergic to the cardamom and I would vomit every time I ate cardamom. I was sitting with my grandmother. She was in the hospital and I was sitting outside her room. And suddenly I had a visual flash of the time when my grandfather, that is the same grandmother's husband, expired. She said, I was 4 years old house. I remember entering the room. All the furniture was pushed towards the walls. The floor was bare, except for some cotton mattresses with white sheets on them. And suddenly at a distance, I saw a picture with dried flowers on it. I couldn't see what it is. It was on a chest of drawers. I pulled out the drawers, climbed them because she's a little child of 4 years. And as she climbed and moved closer to the picture, she saw it was the picture of her grandfather. And then she knew without knowing that something had happened, something bad had happened. At that moment, she got aware in this time that in the background, there was a strong smell of cardamom from somewhere. And all her life, she had this constant vomit because of this cardamom without us knowing why. When that appeared like a flashback, triggered perhaps by the grandmother being ill, triggering that visual of when grandfather, and she could now see that in the periphery was this cardamom. And she said, since that day, I have no problems with cardamom. I put it consciously myself in tea and things, and I have no issues with it. So what happens is, as we get this flashback and we now know what to look for. We get flashbacks in our life often. We don't look at them or we don't know what to look for. But as you look for them, you'd understand that they are linked to something that got into a corrupted circuit and really had no reason to be there. The limbic system responds to two things very strongly: the smell, the taste, and fear. Three things: smell, taste, and fear. So things that today you are afraid of or you have a phobia of, and you explain it with multiple other things you are allergic to in food, things you don't like in food, they are, if you trace them back and not confabulate, not make up stories, not try to find logical reasons why wheat is not good for you or milk is not good for you, but just allow the flashbacks at some point when they come to take you back, you will see that that food item which you are allergic to, or that one which you completely hate for reasons you don't understand, is linked to another circuit where there was an emotion of either a disgust or an emotion of fear or an uh, um, emotion or chemical within the body which resulted in a particular action, today therefore causing that same thing like an allergy. What seems like in people's psychological, now for example, if a person, let's say a person had a very bad attack of food poisoning when she was 5 years old, really bad, it was because of some canned baked beans that she had, we know it was bad, it was fungus, and she had this terrible, where she was admitted to the hospital. Now in that hospital, she wasn't eating anything, so they would give her ice cream every day, which she loved. But after that day, every time she eats ice cream, she vomits, she gets diarrhea. And you think, oh, she must be lactose intolerant. But no, what has happened is, in that baked beans, fungus, diarrhea, food poisoning, which is correct, the ice cream got linked into that whole experience, into a neural circuit. And now, therefore, every time there's an ice cream happening, it's triggering that same response within the body. And thus you see that to strengthen our immunity, it's not just what should I eat, what should I do, what should I not do, no quick fixes. There are no quick fixes to saying, help me in this corona world. A crisis like this is an opportunity to recognize that we were not paying attention to our immunity at a very deep level, and use this as an opportunity to begin to pay attention, correct our immunity, not allow the immunity to be shut off like this by these overreactions that come from some cycle from the past, right? And thus allow the immunity to do its function naturally, which is fight every virus, bacteria, or organism that comes forth. Hence, when you look at scenarios where you overreact and look at the background, when you look at inappropriate reactions, if you don't react, reaction is not a problem. Out of proportion reaction, either more or less, both is a problem. When we are like this, it's coming from somewhere else. And because I'm very gender equal, I also show this, then it's coming from somewhere else. When you come in life in situations, what I call like up against the wall syndrome, when you're talking to somebody and you feel like, I can't get through him. It's like I'm banging my head against the wall, right? That wall is probably you. And you think it's because that guy is stubborn, that guy doesn't understand it. But it's probably that there is this wall coming from your old circuit. And therefore, you can't see beyond it. Because when you trigger that, that's all you're seeing. He is seeing something else which you can't see at all. Repetition of patterns. If everybody in the world is doing bad things to you, if A has insulted you, B has insulted you, C has insulted you, D has insulted you, if it looks like the whole world is as if coming there, whose in life is to do a particular thing to you only, then this problem is some old circuit coming from yourself. We're all too selfish. We're all actually busy living our own lives, caught in our own conscious and automatic circuits. We're not really going to do anything to other people. We don't have that. We're not even that bothered about other people. But when we feel like it looks like everybody is just doing that one thing towards me alone, then you know that this problem is actually some old circuit of yours that is getting triggered out. And this recognition will help you to correct the body function as well as to function perfectly. The one other beautiful area that helps us to recognize these old patterns are dreams. Dreams are a pure language of the automatic brain. Dreams come purely from our old brain, from the limbic system. And that the dreams in itself tell you, because so often in your dream, you will see things like a jigsaw puzzle, like there will be something that happened last night, to something that you were thinking about last week, to some other complete absurd point, which will all join together to give you this weird sounding dream. So, for example, can tell you that I'm standing on this wooden staircase and I'm on a ship, like a cruise ship, and around me there's like a table and buffet, and I can see heaps and heaps of apples, and I'm standing there and this ship is kind of moving from place to place. And then I say, what happens? And she says, that's it, the dream stops. And it sounds so completely weird. I mean, the ship and the staircase and these apples. So you ask the patient, so, I mean, does ships have anything to do with you? Yeah, I was actually looking at cruises, cruises to go on the holiday. So I was seeing a whole lot of, since the last 15 days, every spare minute, I'm looking for cruises to go. Apples, she said, oh yeah, somebody gifted me a whole huge crate of apples yesterday, and I kind of didn't know what to do with these. So the apples come from something that was significant that happened that day. This cruise ship is something that's continuously going on for 15 days. That's where it's coming from. Two pieces. What about the staircase? I don't know. I really don't know what that staircase has to do with. Then I know. This staircase, which has nothing to do with today, yesterday, 15 days ago, 1 month ago, not her present house, that staircase must be coming from that old limbic circuit. And so then I say, just look at that staircase and things around and see if there's any other staircase you've seen way back in childhood. Ask yourself this question. And then suddenly that neural circuit will appear in front of you. If you thus have a recurring dream with some particular one thing, one place, one house, one bit that reminds you everything in the dream will not look like exactly there. Just one bit will remind you of some place in your childhood. That place, if you had repeatedly coming through in different ways, that place is where your neural circuit got corrupted. And that's the one that's creating for you the maximal trouble. Just go back into that, focus over there, look around in your environment, and you'll notice, oh, that's why I'm so petrified of cockroaches. That's why I stand up every time and scream when I see a cockroach. Because I was sitting over there and I was a little kid, I didn't know. And suddenly my brother started jumping, screaming, screaming, screaming. And what had happened, a cockroach had climbed up his pant. And I was never afraid of cockroaches. It never bothered me. But the reaction of that brother to the cockroach is imprinted into this little child's mind and associated with fear. And then you'd see some milk story, and then she'd say, yeah, this I remember that I would be sitting on my table having breakfast and this glass of milk, and my dad and mom would argue all the time. That was the time they would end up, because both were in a hurry, they had their work to do, and they would argue. And she's sitting there on this table with the glass of milk, feeling that anxiety, the biology of the chemicals of emotion which are within her, which is affecting. She feels that feeling in her stomach. She feels that palpitation. She feels that sick feeling inside her. And that gets linked to this glass of milk. And thus, yourself looking at your reactions in the world outside and confabulating and blaming it on something else, even though that may be true, but to look at where it's coming from. Watching your dreams, the dreams come in a window period when you wake up from sleep. In that window period of 3 to 4 minutes, before we shift from our automatic brain, when we sleep, the thinking brain is switched off. We are now in auto mode. When we wake up, there is that 3 minute when this guy is waking up and this guy is still not got inhibited. And in that window period, you remember a dream very vividly. So vivid because it's coming from a visual limbic system memory. It's so clear, you feel you can never forget it. And you say, I'm going to go and drink water, go to the loo, open the door, wake up my kid, and I will write the dream. And you go and do one of these things, and the dream is a blank. That 4 minute window period has shut, and now you don't remember it. And you're like, oh shit, if somebody would remind me of one aspect of that dream, I would give you this whole vivid dream. But there's nobody to remind you. So for yourself, in that window period, if you note the dream, then half an hour later, you can elaborate it for yourself. Remember, the dream is pieces of jigsaw puzzles. Look what's coming from today, 15 days ago, and then take what's coming from some scenario, scene, a circuit in your past, and recognize what has gusaud in that circuit and changed your reaction in emotions, in behavior, in patterns of behavior, as well as in your body functions, as well as in your immune system functioning. If you in your life have always felt, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to go here, but I always end up going here, then recognize that that here is being guided by your this automatic brain, and you don't have control of it. Putting your attention few times a day on your five senses. I don't meditate, but putting your attention for a few minutes whenever you're doing something on your five senses shifts you from this thinking brain to this automatic brain and gives control over it. So when you're eating your food, just take 4 seconds to look at its color, smell, taste. When you're drinking your tea and looking at the scenery and saying how beautiful the scenery is, take a moment to actually look at the tree, look at the sea, look at the details. Because when you look at the details, you're stimulating your neurons, which are stimulating this automatic brain, and thus allowing you to see things more clearly and allowing you more control from your conscious brain over it, more free will. So we are not just helpless puppets responding to old DVDs playing from visual impulses in our limbic system. As we step out, therefore, in this COVID world, the choice is ours. The choice is to behave using our cortical brain and say, let me look at what the situation is and act rationally and calmly, versus getting into our hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis and saying, run, something is happening. What's going to happen to us? When we respond in this particular manner, we are inhibiting our immune system completely. Look at the facts, take precautions. The next 15 days would give answer to many questions. If there is a slight drop in our lockdown now, we will know, are the numbers of cases going up? Are the serious ones going up, or are the milder ones going up? This is a viral infection. Our body's immune function can fight it even without any medication. Strengthen your own immunity by already putting these things into practice. The others, I'm sure you're already doing. But also, try not to inhibit the immunity at this action. You see, your immune function will happen. Its normal function is to happen. What we do is we inhibit it. Just stop inhibiting it. In other words, when some things are happening and we give in to anxiety and panic and respond by an amygdala hijack, we are basically shutting our immune system down. When you hear your neighbor, somebody in their house is COVID positive, and we all become like, keep away from them, don't know what they did, start thinking, did she send her maid to my house? Did she know she had fever that day? Why was she walking in the terrace? And we start this blame game. We start flooding them with multiple messages. We are responding in a way that brings our immunity and that very patient's immunity down. One other thing that works beautifully for our immunity and stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system is the production of oxytocin. Oxytocin is another hormone, again in our pituitary gland. It's the one that we use for feeding. During feeding, breastfeeding, that's the one that comes. But this hormone is also called the love hormone, because when we are with friends, people we are fond of, and we are caring for each other as we as social beings do, this hormone is released. The release of this hormone drops your blood pressure, drops your blood sugar, raises your immune system, and gives you a perfect functioning body to take care of your chronic health as well as fight any new threat to this situation. In other words, if as time goes on, there more and more cases of COVID that we are likely to see in the next month, it is also likely that the bulk of the ones we will see are the mild cases with very few symptoms. We are already seeing many of these cases. These cases can be quarantined in the house itself with adequate precautions. And we can support the people in whose house this is by giving them food, by giving them care, by giving them that support, and not by ostracizing them. People who get the COVID are the heroes because now they have the antibodies, as tests ahead will show us, and they are immune. In fact, they can be of help to a lot of other people because they will be immune to this infection. So as we do this and increase oxytocin, we are going to help their immunity, their immune cells to function, and our own immune cells to function better. In each of our building societies, in our houses, we could plan for an eventuality where there could be some staff members, some security officers who might test positive as things begin to open up. We could already make arrangements if we have some room with a separate bathroom for the staff where they could be comfortably quarantined, giving them all the care, all the good food, all the good nourishment to build their immunity. If there is a flat that is vacant in a building, society members could request that member who doesn't live there if that particular house could be used as a quarantine for somebody who may have senior citizens in their house, right? The best way in mild infections would be if we can stay in our own house surrounded by love, care, good air, good food, and the correct medicines, of course, good homeopathy that will take care of this eventuality. Eventually, this virus will either die out or we will reach the point of herd immunity. Herd immunity is when a certain number of people have already got that infection and have the antibody, and that naturally tapers out the presence of this virus. To have that herd immunity, we have to get that infection. To get that infection should not be something that we're all scared even of telling other people. As of now, if somebody has COVID, they are stuck in their room. They will take all the quarantine cares, the BMC is informed, but they're afraid of telling their neighbors and friends because they will ostracize them. On the contrary, this is the time when we embrace others, help them out, talk to them, because staying alone in the room is really bad for one's immunity. You need to give them that support in addition to medicines and good food that will help them mildly fight this thing and come out stronger with the antibody towards this. As we move forward into this world, I hope that the message that I give you is not just for building immunity against this COVID, which is what is needed right now, but also building long-term immunity for any further COVIDs or threats that can happen in the future. I'm now going to take any questions. Those who raised their hand, I'm going to ask the ones, Yvonne Fernandez, ma'am, if you would unmute yourself, I'm allowing you to talk. So if you'd unmute yourself. Hello? Are you there? Mrs. Fernandez? Are you unmuting yourself? Okay, no. Anjali Prajapati? You have to unmute yourself as well. You have a mute on your microphone. So you must unmute yourself, only then you'll be able to speak. I've unmuted you, but you need to unmute yourself. Okay, I'll unmute you. Anjali.
Divya, can you hear me, Divya?
Yes, who's that? Yes, I can hear you. Mrs. Fernandez, welcome.
Thank you very much. It was very, very informative. Though I had a lot of other work to do, I've kept it away and I'm the beneficial for it. Thank you so much. It was very, very informative.
Thank you very much. Highly appreciate that you were here. Means a lot to me. Thank you so much.
God bless you, and it was really good. I must tell you that. Only
Thank you.
now and then, at some very important points, it went off the screen and we couldn't hear some important points.
Yes, I know.
Recorded it,
right.
And if you can send us a recording,
yes.
I'd love to listen to it again.
Yes, I think all those parts have got recorded into the limbic system. So they will come through as visuals and sound.
True. But you know, when you listen to something for a second time, it becomes part of you. So I'd love to listen to it again.
Yes, we are recording this event and we will send it to all of you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Divya. God bless.
Thank you. Anjali, is there a question? Would you like to? Anjali Prajapati, could you? No, okay. I'm not able to unmute her. She's Mr. Randeri. You have a question? Please unmute yourself. Can you? You have to go onto your audio and unmute. Okay. While you do that, I'm just going to take it from Captain Wadia. Captain Wadia, if you would unmute yourself. Is that happening? Okay, I'm going to maybe allow you all to unmute yourself. see. Mm. Okay. Are you able to now unmute? Can you speak? No? Okay. Allow chats. Okay. For whatever reason, I don't know why. Maybe. Okay. Now are you okay? Let me try here more. I'm not able to, for whatever reason, unmute you. Maybe if you put your question in the question answer one, I could look at it and
Now I
answer it
can.
from there.
Now I think
Yes,
now
now
you
you
can hear me.
can. Yes, go ahead.
Can you
Please
hear me
tell me.
now?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, Divya, one. I'll talk to you later on the phone, and I want to discuss a lot of things. But have you heard of this organization called DPAS in Delhi?
No.
Okay, there's a lot of collaboration, and I've learned that, I'm an aviator, I'm a pilot, and
Yes.
aviation safety. There are a lot of information from your talk which can be used in aviation, and I'll discuss it with you. And an organization called DPAS does a lot of research on what you're talking about also.
Okay. Perfect.
I'll talk to you
Okay.
later.
Yes. Please do let me know on that. Yes. Okay. Um, Kamini, will you unmute yourself? Yes, Kamini, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Yeah, doctor. It was so
Yes.
nice hearing. So
Nice to
I,
see you. Yes.
once you figure out what has triggered the allergy, so do you need to medicate or just figuring out would sort it?
Well, both. The process. So taking the homeopathic medicine is a simple way because it happens automatically, right? You don't have to consciously get involved into the process. The medicine brings it out to you, like how I told you about that patient with the cardamom, right? Doing both together would multiply the effect and the rapidity of the progress. But can you, yes, do it by yourself? Sure, it can. It sometimes can be difficult because our conscious brain keeps blocking us, and we can get caught into that routine and can take longer, but it's absolutely possible to do it without taking the remedy as well.
Okay, but just thinking about it or thinking about the incidents can help in uh,
So
overcoming.
thinking will not help because thinking comes from the conscious mind. Remember, when we have talked of the brain, we've talked of the thinking part of the brain as the one which is not part of this limbic circuit. The limbic circuit is one that sees the visual. Oh, so I'm echoing somewhere. Let me just put this off. Right. So the limbic circuit is one that sees, smell, taste, and sees it as a visual. So seeing the event as a visual in front of you with everything in the periphery, and then recognizing what things in the periphery are, which happened in that moment, are triggering you now, is what will help you. Thinking about it will only tell you, oh, this she said, this I said, I felt upset. Focusing on how I felt or what is happening as an event is not going to help. It's counterproductive, completely counterproductive. It only gets you more caught into that circuit, right? But looking at that scene and saying, okay, this happened, there I felt angry, and what was in the periphery? Oh, there was this skateboard in the periphery. Oh, so this skateboard now is triggering anger because it's triggering that old circuit inside me. Seeing it in this way and recognizing it will solve the problem, not thinking about it.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. I'm going further down to some more hands raised. So Mala, please go on. What's your question? You're unmuted. Mala Gill, go on. You got somewhere
Can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you. Go ahead.
That was a brilliant session. Thank you very much.
Thank
Very
you.
quickly, I just want to ask you this question. You talked about the limbic system.
Yes.
So that means the limbic system is really our subconscious mind?
The subconscious mind is a psychological term, right? Which means things that we didn't know about. It was a term that came before we even recognized so much about our brain, right? So the unconscious, as we understand in psychology, is a part of this, of what happens within this automatic brain. So it's not the same. The automatic brain is a larger area. The unconscious mind is an abstract entity we use in psychology, but it definitely has this limbic memory as an important part of it.
Oh, so it's a part of the subconscious mind, the limbic memory.
Correct. No, the subconscious mind is part of the limbic. The limbic is bigger.
Okay, okay.
It's the larger entity. And the
Okay.
more tangible entity, it's the actual circuitry. See, the idea of subconscious mind is an abstract concept. The neural connection and the neural circuit is a tangible, actual thing.
Okay, okay.
And that's where our so-called subconscious issues come from.
Okay, all right.
Right?
Okay, thank you. That makes
You're
it very
welcome.
clear. Thank you so much,
Yes,
Divya.
welcome. Urmi Khullar. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Dr. Divya. This was
Hi, Urmi.
hi. This was absolutely amazing. I mean, it was absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much. I had a question, and I know it's one of the things that you ask me very often is to remember the dream, right? And
Yes.
is it possible that some people don't remember as well? Because, I mean, I know for a fact that I get up in the morning, I try to remember, and I can't. So are different people different? Hello?
Could different people, yeah, your question is about, can you hear? Hello?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes. So the question is whether different people, some remember dreams, some don't, right? So
Yes.
we all dream. In
Okay.
some people, there is more fluidity between the conscious and the unconscious, and they remember the automatic brain and the thinking, and they remember their dreams more clearly. Some people are more used to, kind of when you put attention on the dream and remember it, right? And so you would remember it very well. So it doesn't mean anything. There are people who dream a lot, some people dream less, some remember them more, but everybody does dream. And the way to remember the dream is in that 3 to 4 minute window. As soon as you wake up, say, did I have a dream?
Okay.
Right? But if you don't and you don't remember it, that's not an issue as well, right? It's one of the tools that can help us to go there. There are many others, like I said, simply observing in our daily reactions. Yes. So not having a dream shouldn't be anything to worry about. Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you again, Dr. Divya. This was fascinating. It was really awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Charu Kindra. Yeah. Hi. Welcome.
Yeah, hello, Dr. Divya. This was such a brilliant session. And it actually answered so many of my very mystic questions that I had about your line of treatment. And it's really amazing to see. So my question and curiosity is towards the hijack part of that concept that you mentioned in the middle of your presentation.
Yes.
And also wondered whether the lymphic is it somewhere situated around the temple area?
The limbic system is inside, actually. It's not here in the temple.
Okay,
Here is more
right.
cortical areas. It's within inside. It's where the
Okay.
amygdala, etc. So it's actually the cortex is around and the limbic is kind of in the center of that area.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So this is basically also about mindfulness, like how mindful we are, then we can kind of also, get some information from the lymphic, like you said, that five senses are very important.
Yes. So mindfulness, that terminology is again simply becoming aware of
the five senses and taking inputs from them, right? Yeah,
Absolutely
right.
right. Yes.
I
Even
mean, I can't
forms-
thank you enough, Dr. Divya. This has been the most interesting concept. I mean, it almost wants me to, study this further. So I'm looking forward to more seminars from you, which can really help, lay people like us.
Absolutely.
Thank you
Yes,
so
I do
much.
agree there.
So
Thank you.
grateful.
Thank you. Thank you. Subha Subramaniam, you are unmuted. So if you would unmute yourself, can you unmute yourself? Hello, Subha.
Hi. Yes, can you
Yes.
hear me?
Yes, can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am. It was a brilliant, brilliant talk. I missed the first part of it, but I'm happy I was able to get most of what you were trying to say. And what I would really want you to know is that this has been, the message has been conveyed in a very ordinary way so that people who are not used to these medical terms and many scientific terms are able to understand that. So I think that's a great advantage we've had listening to you. And it has also opened up many areas of thought, which I did not have initially, but I can relate to some of the issues and examples you had mentioned in your webinar. What I would like to know is if you would continue to give us more sessions like this, and if so, have you have anything in mind in the near future, ma'am?
So this was the first of the series that I'd been planning in my head for a long time. And as you rightly said, it was like, how do I put it in a way that conveys what I want to say? So yes, there would be more. It's not yet clear in my head where it would go to, but parenting is one, pregnancy is another. Being in the flow, a topic that is of great interest to me is being in a flow when we are in our full creativity, right? And we are like, there are moments, we've all felt this in our life, where we are able to function in an absolutely seamless, it seems like, the world, everything is just happening the way it should happen.
Right.
And that is some kind of balance between this kind of thinking disciplined brain and this creative brain. So that is another topic that certainly I would like to do a session on.
Oh,
And
that'd
I'm
be
sure
really
there will be
nice.
more sessions because I enjoy it too.
Yeah, thank you so much. And do let us know, please. And I look forward to the recording that you would be
We will
sending.
email you. Yeah. And at the same time, we have a Facebook page, which is called Leap to Health. There would be information about future webinars on that as well. So you could just register on that. It's called Leap to Health, Dr. Divya Chhabra.
Yeah,
That's
will do.
awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Natasha, I've unmuted you. Can you, hello, there?
Yes, can you hear me, doctor?
Yes, can hear you. Go ahead.
Hi, doctor. Thank you so much for this.
I request
incredible
the
session.
rest of you who were unmuted, you would just mute yourself as well so that we don't hear back noise from your microphones. Thank you. Yes, Natasha, go on.
Yeah, doctor, I was asking, I think, and this is something anyways I face whenever I also come, to you for consultations, is what if your like cortical brain is so strong and perhaps, you're focusing so much on it that it inhibits access to this limbic, memories and sensations. So I know I always struggle with this, trying to remember, or even the sensations. It's almost like the logical cortical mind keeps getting in the way
Of that.
of that. So how do you sort of start to get past it and train it to let you access that area? I mean, obviously it's threatened by some level with that.
Right. So it's actually the cortical brains, as I showed you, its natural function is to inhibit this automatic brain, right? That's how it's trained to do, right? So once you recognize that, and that it's going to do its bit, right? Whereas this guy is going to do its bit. So as long as you see it as a play between the two, it's not really a problem. I don't see the cortical brain as a problem. I see it as a game of hide and seek. The cortical brain does its bit. This guy is anyway doing its bit. It's like the movie is going on in the other theater.
Right.
Now the question is, you have to dodge this guy and get into the other theater. So
Yeah.
it's more like a game of hide and seek. And just incidentally, in your case taking, you were able to do this brilliantly.
Oh, is it?
Your cortical brain was working, but your visuals, you were seeing the visuals in a parallel zone at the same time. Right? So that's what happens in all of us. Even if we have a strong cortical brain, if we are able to get into going into any one of the senses, right? Smell, taste, touch, for
Right.
that moment, it automatically opens that. And there'll be a constant play. Then we go into thinking, then we go back here. Then we go into thinking and we go back here. It's not like we shut that thinking brain at all, right?
Right.
Just
Got
that
it.
we allow the two to have that interplay, and we don't pick information from the thinking brain. We take the information only from the automatic or the limbic system.
Super. Please do some more seminars on this limbic and you know,
Thank you,
this
Natasha.
was incredible. Thank you so much, doctor.
Thank you. Sanjeev, Mr. Sanjeev Suri, very happy that you were here.
This is Sandhya, Dr. Divya.
Sandhya.
Yeah.
I'm also here. Surprise. Acha, you're here.
No,
Very
he's
good.
also
Good.
here. He's also listening to it.
Tell me.
So my
Yes.
question, Dr. Divya, is that, this talk that you gave today, I was correlating it with the Vedantas because I'm a Vedanta student and I'm learning all about Vedanta.
Yes.
And there is such a big connection between what you spoke about the senses and the subconscious mind and what they teach us. It's so similar.
Right.
So I was really amazed at how science and spirituality is so, how do you think it is so connected?
Truth is only one, right? What is. Right? And if it is tapping into the way our brain and body functions, and if you've tapped into it correctly, whether it is Vedanta, whether it is yoga, whether it is homeopathy, whether it is a form of meditation, it's going to speak the same language.
Okay.
If if you're speaking Punjabi, whether we speak Punjabi in Bombay or you speak it in another place or you speak it in another place, it will be Punjabi. Do you get what I'm saying? So something is true because it's gone to its depth. It's all going to be the same. One of the principles of science is that it is universal. One of the principles of physics or chemistry or biology is that it will be universally applicable to beyond your laboratory, to beyond your textbook. It will happen in the world around. Right?
Okay.
So principles are always the same if you have come to the true deepest principle.
Okay.
So I'm not surprised. I just feel every
time. It is amazing because, I was so taken aback. I said, oh my God, this is exactly what we are learning in the Vedanta classes and Gita and everything.
So we should have a talk on that and compare and
we
contrast.
Really
should do that. We should do that. Right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Sandhya. Thank you. Vinod Mama, that's my mama here. I've just unmuted you. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah. Hi, Divya.
Hi.
Parul says she wants to speak to you.
Hi, Divya Didi.
Hello, how are you, Parul?
I'm doing very well, Divya Didi. Everyone's here. Nita Bua, my mom, my dad, and myself, and we were listening to your chat. So thank you so much for this.
Thank you very much. You got my oxytocin running. So somebody asked this question, how would oxytocin be produced? You produce it by chatting with your family and your friends and them saying nice, loving things about you, and oxytocin is produced automatically. You think about somebody else and remember them in your, like I remember them, my Masi in my childhood, and being so caring and loving and giving us food, and oxytocin is produced.
Yes, that is so true. She's doing that exactly right now as well. So we have a lot of oxytocin.
Yes.
Divya Didi, I had a question.
Yes.
From your talk, I could understand that breathing is very important and that really helps in calming your breath. And then besides paying attention to the 5 senses, that was important as well. But Didi, the question I had was, when you have a reaction to something which is very involuntary, for example, you're stuck in a traffic jam, or your boss calls you and says that you're laid off, or, the reaction happens instantly. How do I prevent and stop myself from reacting instantly and concentrate on the solutions, that is the breathing and paying attention to the senses. Because once the reaction is out, then I can't control it. Then I go into this downward spiral.
That's right. So like you very rightly pointed out that even though we know, okay, now you know that when I'm reacting in the traffic jam, I'm reacting to something else. But often in the beginning, at that moment, when that amygdala hijack happens, you're not able to stop it at that minute, right? But what you do is just post that. If you take that minute to look at what was around you, just focus on the senses around you and stop the explanation that your logical mind will give you. So the logical mind will say, she did this, he did this, they did this. So don't allow that, block that, and look at what was happening around. As you do this in a cup, so repetition creates the problem, repetition solves the problem. As you do it, post the event, instantly post the event a few times, right? It will naturally start having lesser intensity. And therefore, when it starts happening, you will already be trained to start looking at it. So initially, you'll only be able to do it after the event. But
okay, so practice makes perfect then, that means.
Yes, because it forms your neural circuit. Practice makes perfect in anything because your neuronal circuit becomes strengthened. So now you strengthen a circuit that will have you being able to look at what's happening before reacting.
Got it.
You get it? So it's all a play of the neurons. You just shift one neuron from one place to the other and then pass electrical current repeated from there. That's practice. Do you get it? And now it becomes a circuit. So now the moment that situation happens, automatically you'll first start seeing around.
Got it.
Because you've trained that circuit like that. You've conditioned it like that.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your talk, Divya.
Thank you.
It was so nice and brilliant talk indeed.
Thank you.
Divya.
Thank you. I'm going to the next question. Akshat Rajan. Is that Akshat Karuna? Okay.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much, Dr. Divya. This was super informative.
Yes.
I had a question about, like, once you do notice things like the yellow skateboard, and if you have been writing down your dreams and kind of breaking the circuit, would you recommend, like, if you have access to that object or to that place, actually going there and like kind of making a better memory, or like kind of, like taking something that's more actionable? Because like you said, like just awareness in the thinking system may not be enough.
That's a very, very good point you have brought, Akshat. That how does one break a circuit is just recognizing that this object has triggered enough. In many cases, it is enough. But when it's a very strong circuit, and this is what they did in Pavlovian technique, what they call is extinction of the circuit. A best way to have the extinction of a circuit is one, to recognize and then remove that circuit, but also add it to another event. So if you find that your yellow skateboard is the trigger, not only are you recognizing that actually this yellow skateboard happened to be there, it's not important really, but if you now put this yellow skateboard in another circuit where there's a pleasurable event, you are completely removing that old neuronal circuit. So it's like you go to a party and buy a yellow skateboard and carry it with you, where everybody is having a really good time, right? And you carry that skateboard with you for a few times in good moments. That's the best way of disinhibiting that. So going back to that particular place is not really important, because remember, we can go back to it into our head as well. It's the same thing, whether we go into our head or we go there, it's the same thing, whether we see it from our eyes or we see it in the brain, it's the same thing. So seeing that is important, not dwelling on the emotion of it, or staying with the, oh, this happened and the storyline, just keeping that visual is. And then when you recognize the triggers, associating those triggers with other more positive and pleasurable events can break that completely. Does that answer your question, Akshat? Hello? You got muted somehow. Mala, if you could just mute yourself. Akshat, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah. Yes, that does answer my question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Divya. This is Karuna.
Hi, Karuna.
Yeah, so that was such an enlightening talk. I loved it.
Thank you.
My question is that when you talk about the lymphic memory,
Yes.
is the lymphic memory only associated to your childhood and your years, which are like 10 years away, or is your lymphic memory also associated with the last, say, present, I mean, by the last 2-3 years? Because there are certain things that happen now which are very fresh in your mind also.
Correct. The recent memory is more a function of the cortical brain or the thinking brain.
Yeah.
Whereas the limbic takes in all the past memories, not necessarily only childhood, right? But let's say beyond 4 or 5 years, it's all going into the limbic system. However, it's these memories that form in early childhood where we don't fully have the comprehension and the knowledge to inhibit it at that time. Do you understand?
All right.
As we grow older, we have a better filter here, right? So even though a big instance of something can happen, we are less likely to associate it with other things because this brain can already inhibit it. Right? Except like it can be like a very big event that overtook at that time, like that example of the peach story I told, because then that itself will also cause an imprint. So an imprint can happen at any time in one's life, right?
So what I'm understanding is a lymphic memory, which is 10 years ago, which you remember clearly now, is also an effect of another lymphic memory of your childhood. Probably.
Very likely. Yes. It's like a parallel circuit, like a spiral that's going in.
So like a fear of something can just keep manifesting through incidents and different incidences.
Yes, as a pattern resulting into anxiety, and we often then outside show this anxiety about health or, logical stuff around like business and, stuff that's actually happening. But when we realize that we are reacting like that, it is triggering some very core anxiety, fear trigger, which is at a very young age, usually somewhere between the ages of 3 and 7.
Okay. Thank you so much. Lovely. Thank you.
Keep going backwards. So the idea is when you remember this happened then, link it to another one further back. Link it to another one.
Got it.
Got it? Yeah.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay, good. Udmi, who's left? Is there somebody that I have not unmuted? Yes, a lot. Chitra. Chitra Srinivasan, can you unmute yourself? Hello?
Hello.
Yes, hi.
Hi, Divya. Thanks a million for sharing your experiences, and I've learned a lot. In fact, I'm using your mantra only. It is triggering my epilepsy or when I'm feeling depressed.
Right.
Your mantra of thinking of different songs and different passions of something like that, what is available, cooking myself in something and de-stressing myself. Until now, touch wood, I'm using your mantra and it is successful. Looking forward for such sessions.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Your mantra is very useful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay.
How are my children?
Very good. Thank you.
So how my
Very good. Very good.
Okay, dear.
Okay. Thank you. Devika Goel, I've unmuted you. Would you like to take on? If you unmute yourself. Is there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. It was a very insightful session. But honestly, a lot of it has gone above my head. So I think I'll have to hear your recording again to kind of register everything properly.
Absolutely. You can always ask me to talk again. I can keep talking this constantly as well. Don't worry.
So, it was too technical, honestly, for me to understand, for the first go. Okay. But I've understood that, you're talking about the lymphatic system, the conscious, the unconscious.
Yes.
And, so I just wanted to ask if you could in simple, literally in simple, because right now we have a lot of fear about the COVID, right? I mean, like you mentioned, how we have a neighbor having it and how we think and how we have our own fears. So if you could just in very simple tell me that, how can we think to increase our immunity? Because, this subconscious, conscious, cortex, everything, just kind of went off.
Right. So when you're getting anxious about this COVID, first step is to think, look at the facts around you, and inhibit the anxiety by saying it's a virus. 85 to 90% people recover even without medication. It's just another kind of virus which we have to fight in a different manner. Number one.
Right.
Second is that's first point, using your thinking mind to inhibit this automatic anxiety reflex that starts. Second is when you still after that find yourself really constantly still getting, say, too anxious, then recognize that this unusual crisis is triggering an old anxiety circuit from inside you, and it's only finding an expression now at this COVID virus. So if you really want to deal with that anxiety, would be to go back to your own anxiety, right? And recognize that it's coming from some old, my own issues, my own anxiety. Then you'll be able to think very calmly and rationally and take appropriate steps for that situation.
Like, that Akshit's question was a very good one, but then, he's probably identified, for example, what his circuit was, and, he can visualize it again or go back to the place again to better it.
Correct.
But suppose you do not know your circuit. I mean, you do not know why you're thinking what you're thinking, and you cannot go back to some kind of a trigger. Then what?
So you go
So then I have
back
to just help
slowly,
myself as in today.
As in today, you would help yourself by one, every time you get into anxiety, breathing. Take deep breaths, because you will trigger your parasympathetic system, which brings everything down to normal and allows you to think clearly, right? And the second is that you will use the logic that you have to say that, okay, I need to calm myself down and I need to think rationally as to what steps I will take. And you tell yourself that, listen, my over anxiety is coming from myself. Just this much you tell yourself. 3 things.
Right.
This over anxiety is coming from myself, number one. Second is that I take breaths when I'm anxious, so I think clearly. When you can think clearly, you'll be taking correct steps.
Right.
Third is be helpful to people around you, right? Think of others, be helpful, you'll bring.
Oh, that I do all the time. So you know what, actually, I'm not getting anxious. It's more about that paranoia, you can say. Like, everybody says, wash everything that you get home. Anything you touch, you keep washing your hands. You get groceries, you're sitting and wiping it and cleaning it. Basically, I think that's getting a little overwhelming. It's not about being anxious.
This is coming from yourself. This is not coming from the situation, because the situation demands certain steps. When we are overdoing it, paranoia is a sign of hyper anxiety. Paranoia means you have to first say, this is triggering my own paranoid thing. The moment you say that, 50% of the problem. The moment you say that, 50% of the problem will come down.
Okay.
Let me do one thing. Let me email you some more clear steps as to what you can do, right?
That will really be
completely
nice.
new to you. I will definitely do that, right?
Thank you. Thank you.
Payal Segal, I'm unmuting. My pleasure. Payal Segal, I'm unmuting you. Would you like to say something? Is Payal there?
Hello.
Hello. Yes,
doctor.
Payal. Go ahead.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you. Go ahead.
Thanks a lot for this lovely session, and it was a completely new area for me to hear, and it's really enlightened me. Something which I've been having for years, like vasovagal, and I somehow wanted to talk to you. Have been trying to fix an appointment with you, which hopefully in future I can get soon. And this vasovagal for almost more than 15 years.
Yes.
And it's like a pain or a cut. Completely, I get unconscious.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So is it something which your limbic system study of this can help me if I relate it with it?
Absolutely, because this kind of episode is a overstimulation of the parasympathetic nervous system. It's all part of this vagal episodes that come from the parasympathetic nervous system. So this is all coming from that limbic system. So the sympathetic, parasympathetic is all part of this original system. More originators of that. So a problem there comes straight from that situation, right?
So is there somehow that we can find a cure to it, or what is it like?
Yes, you can. So I think that you should actually take homeopathy. If you email, I'll find you a good homeopath nearby to you.
Okay. Yes, I'll definitely
Let's
try to
move
get
you
in touch with
towards
you
that.
again. Because yeah, there have been
I
cases.
will find you somebody.
Sure. Because it's developed a fear. So I would really once again want to thank you for this session today, and we'll really look forward to more of these.
I'm also going to just answer a few questions that some people have put in the question answer session, which is one is many of them are asking what medicine should we take for prophylaxis? Should we take arsenic alb? So arsenic alb is a general medicine for prophylaxis against a lot of contagious infections and virals. In the beginning of this epidemic, this is the one it in homeopathy, we can have medicines that are close that can have part benefit, but there is one medicine that's the bullseye for this epidemic. And the medicine that I have found for this is a medicine called Cymex lectularius. Again, if you are interested in knowing more about this or wanting this as a preventive, if you email us, we will send you that medicine. Somebody else asked me, should I and camphor mixed? Definitely don't mix two medicines and take it. That is not the most effective way to take homeopathy. If you have a homeopath already, see that what your homeopath suggests to you, whether you should take your own remedy or take a particular constitutional or take one of these remedies. If you are not with a homeopath, if you email us, we would guide you further onto what preventive you could take for you and your family. So, Mr. Niranjan Rao, I've unmuted you. Are you around? No, I don't see him there. So, Mr. Praveen Makhija, are you there?
Hi, Dr. Divya. This is Praveen. Kiran also is with me.
Hi, Dr. Divya.
Yes, hi.
So, Dr. Divya, as usual, thank you for all your support. Dr. Divya, I needed to know that this heightened response that one gets in certain situations are happening more frequently, obviously, these days. And certain incidents cause similar response all the time. So even if you're aware, the heightened response just involuntarily turns up. How does one tackle it at that time? Since you says this kind of response inhibits, your immune system, you are yourself inhibiting your immune system then. How do you go about dealing with this heightened response? Like something as simple as glass breaking for me is heightened response. Of course, the COVID is causing its own response. So how does one, even if you're aware that you have a heightened response, how do you curb it at that time, or how do you deal with it at that time?
Like I said, often at that very time, you may not be able to curb it. But what you do is, if each time it happens, you tell yourself, okay, this is not the glass. You react, whatever you've done, shouted, whatever you've done. But then you stop and you say, okay, it was not that. See, what is that coming?
Doctor, you paused. Can't hear you.
Okay, it will come. Now, now is it okay? Hello?
Yeah, better now.
Yeah. So if you react, doesn't matter, post the reaction, just look each time, right?
Just focus on that visual with those things and just see what flashback from childhood comes, right? And then you'll be able to understand why you're reacting to those particular things. You'll be able to see why you're reacting to those particular things. So your first step is to acknowledge fully that it's coming from me, not from outside, right? And then after the event, keep looking at it. Yes?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. And that will help start the process.
Okay.
And as you repeat this, it will get lighter and lesser, and it'll disappear.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Doctor, I thank you so much. It was an amazing session. Really, really. I now connected how and why you asked us about the dreams, and it was helpful. Okay. One thing about I also wanted to understand as a family, as we being part of it, how do we react? Sometimes, obviously, with Kiran, obviously she reacting, I counteract, and then it goes in a different tangent. So, as family, how do I help?
Because when you are reacting, you are also reacting from something inside you also. It's just, marriages are made in heaven, right? They are made so that we can each bring out each other's inside something, right? So while on the surface, it looks like you're reacting to something else your spouse has said and vice versa, actually, she is only triggering something in whatever she said or did, right? Could be just the way she moved her hand, for example, which is not even significant, right? Is triggering something else inside you. It's coming from you, right? When we use our intellectual mind, we can always say, but she did this, for sure. Or she can say, he did this, he did this. It's logically there. There will always be things the other person does. But the actual things it triggers are not really from those. It's from somewhere inside. So at each time that happens is you too look at, oh, what's it triggering in me? Sure, she's triggering you a lot. You're triggering her a lot. But that's the fun, no? That's why you get married, to solve your problems.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Usha Rao, I'm unmuting you if you could speak. Hello, is Usha Rao here? Usha Rao, are you here? Hello? Hello? Are you here? Okay, I'm not able to unmute her. Mr. Madan Talreja, are you here?
Hello.
Mr. Madan Talreja? Yes, Usha, please tell me. Yes.
Yeah, I just the way I understood from your session is that we need to change our perception when certain incidents happen, so that we don't diminish the power of our immune system, and we have to positively also tune our mind, and then release the oxytocin gets released, so everything is calm and quiet and peaceful. So it has been very, very informative, doctor. Only thing is, we'll mail you for a preventive medicine that you may be of.
Absolutely, absolutely. Please,
where we can collect it from. Thank you
absolutely.
so much.
We'll sort that out. Right.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah,
worry.
please.
Okay, okay. That's my aunt, Prabha Chachiji. Are you here? I've unmuted you. Hello? Chachiji, are you here? Can you unmute yourself? Okay. I'm not seeing, I'm not sure. Yeah. I've unmuted you. Are you able to unmute yourself? Okay. Yes, happening. No, I think it's not happening. Okay, while you try to unmute, I'm going to Geeta Peshavaria. Yes.
Hi, doctor. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. I got my answers from the other people who were talking. I had the same question. Thank you so much. It was very good. Learn so much for the first time. I love to hear more of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm glad it was answered. Kushal, I'm unmuting you. Kushal and family, if you're there, I've unmuted you. Allowed to talk. Can you unmute yourself? Yes, yes, you're unmuted. Usha Rao, can you mute yourself so then the background noise won't come through? Kushal, are you there? Hello? Yeah, go ahead. Okay, I cannot hear them, so I'm going to Mr. Madan Talreja, were you able to unmute yourself? No, okay. Is there anybody who's left? Amrita? Amrita?
Yeah, hi. Hi, Dr. Divya.
Hi, Amrita. Yes, go ahead.
So lovely to see you as well.
Thank you.
And what a wonderful lecture. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amrita.
I had a question around the dreams actually, in relation to the thing is that in the last couple of months, and you mentioned that dreams, everybody dreams, but it's a fluidity. It's how fluid you are between the subconscious and the conscious.
Yeah.
But, and if you have phases where you have, say, very vivid dreams,
correct,
and how does that? I mean, what's the significance there? Maybe because, like, for example, I mean, I know from personal experience, the last 2 months, dreams have been very vivid, and this is something I'm hearing from a lot of people actually. So I do not know whether it's a collective thing. I don't know how it works. Yeah.
No, that's a very valid point. So basically, when would there be phases that the dreams are more? Absolutely. And these phases are generally when we are upset or when we are unwell, right? And therefore, they are pointers to where is it coming from? What neural circuit is it coming from? In this particular time, you understand, though there is a similar situation that we are all in. There is a lockdown, there is fear of infection, all the food is coming in, we have to clean it. There is a similarity, yet as this prolongs over a period of time, what it triggers in us is our own inner circuit ultimately. You would find as well that as a crisis situation like this, it brings on something from within us, which is our own, which this has only been a trigger that's bringing out. That's why there are more dreams at this time as well. And that's why this is an opportunity to not only look at them and improve the immunity for today, but also improve it in a deeper way for a much more long-term benefit. I hope that answers your question. Somehow you've disappeared from there. Okay. Yeah, Amrita, I hope it answered that question.
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. Yes.
Me on the AC.
Anjali Pratap, I mean, can you mute? Okay, I'll mute you. Geeta also, if you can mute yourself, because then others, okay. Madhuri Bhatia, unmuting you. Can you unmute yourself if you're there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go on.
Yes, hi Divya, thank you very, very much for an extremely informative, very interesting and elucidating lecture.
Thank you.
I am a patient of yours, as you know. I was, in fact, during the question answer session, a lot of my questions have been answered, but I was also very happy to note that most people seem to be fairly much in control, and they are fairly positive. I find that in my case, almost on a regular everyday basis, I have to keep making a very strong effort to pull myself out of not exactly a negativity syndrome, but an element of agitation, which, as you know, I've in any case been suffering from even before the whole COVID situation transpired. I find that I'm not sure what the trigger is, but I mean, for instance, right today, I wanted to ask you questions, and I was absolutely terrified, and I kept thinking, no, I won't be able to phrase it. And And what if I'm not able to phrase it properly and I stutter and stammer? So I just won't. And then I said, no, I have to pluck up the courage to do it. So I've been, waging this ding dong battle with myself for the last 20 minutes. And I was quite worried when you said, okay, Madhuri Bhatia, do you want to unmute yourself? And I said, no, I have to do this. I'm just wondering, is there something I can do to get myself out of this, to just be a little more cheerful and just get on with the program of life and living on an everyday basis? I also find that I get very, very tense and apprehensive about when all this opens up. What is going to be this new normal? Is it going to be vastly changed? And am I going to be able to cope? Or am I just going to collapse in a heap?
Well, the question is, I mean, are things going to be different, and how different are they going to be? Right? As I said, I think in the next 15 days, we will get answers to it. However, there have been epidemics like this in the past. They have come and they have gone, and life has gone on. The human being has survived because we are extremely adaptable, right? I mean, few years before, I don't think you would kind of, let's say, if you were thinking 30 years ago, we didn't do computers, we didn't do Zoom, we didn't do any of this, right? But we managed to cope, right? Being locked down in a house for 3 months, if somebody had told us we would have to stay locked down like this, we would have said, impossible. We can't do it. How would we all manage? But we have, right? If somebody would have said there would be no cars on Mumbai street for 3 months, we would have laughed, right? Absolutely. So we are extremely adaptable. We have, again, the ability to form multiple circuits. Plasticity in our brain is what is our unique ability. And because of that, we can adapt, we can change, we evolve. And that's why the human being has survived, and so many others have. So yes, we will all survive. We will all move ahead, whether it's a new normal or the old normal. It will eventually, we'll get used to it. You understand? We get used to it. Like you go to a new house, some take shorter, some take longer, but eventually we all get used to it, right? So we will, and whatever it is, there will be something different from it. There is always a new normal. We were in the villages, there were bullock carts. The new normal became cars. The new normal became planes. So the new normal will have something, right? What it is, time will tell us, and we shall embrace it, and we shall be flexible, and we will manage it as it comes. And you've been doing very good, actually, I have to tell you.
Oh, you really think so? That makes me feel better.
Yes. You've been doing very well. So thank you for your question. I'm going to another oxytocin releasing aunt of mine, Malti Masi. My Masi is here. Masi, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, Devi. Hello. I unmuted myself. Can you hear?
Can hear you. Go on. Yes, very clearly.
Divya, everything was so good. What I liked was the last few things you mentioned, that how to treat people who are going through COVID experience. And thanks for that. We see to it that we do it. Okay.
Thank you. And I hope all of us can take that ahead and do.
We'll wait for your recording of this to understand things much
Absolutely.
more.
Absolutely. We'll send that.
Okay, God bless.
Thank you, Masi. Is there anybody else who I would like to speak, who I have not unmuted and who's in, can just quickly put it down in the question answer or put it in the chat right now? I can quickly unmute you. I think I've unmuted. I've spoken to most people. Is there any other question that there's a question that says, are there any ways to measure immunity? Not really. It's not so easy to measure immunity except by actually doing antibody tests. But it's also the way you feel. You know that chemical and emotional, those moments you wake up and you feel good. It's like we say, I woke up on the right side of the bed. You're feeling good that day. That day, your immunity is going to be good. So you can sense that chemical and biological change inside you very clearly. If you take a minute and you say, "आज अच्छा दिन लग रहा है," दिन कोई अच्छा बच्चा नहीं है. Nothing is wrong, right or wrong in the din. It is right and wrong inside us. So that acha din is inside, and that day is your good immunity. And that's the feeling that you want to hold and you want to stay with that feeling. Somebody else asked, would it be beneficial to watch more comic and fun television shows rather than violent ones? It's a good question. Jokes and fun, good humor is definitely very good neuropeptides that trigger a very positive immune response within us. However, if somebody constantly wants to watch something violent all the time, this is a good opportunity to see that this violent visual must have some pattern in the limbic system that is constantly getting triggered, and that is why the person wants to constantly watch this violent. So rather than forcing oneself and saying, I'm not going to watch this, is if I'm constantly wanting to watch these extremely gory and violent things, what is it is triggering inside me? Let me look what in my limbic system it's coming from. Huda, you have a question, so I am going to find you and unmute you. Yes. Huda, yeah, go on. You're unmuted. Speak, please. Huda Hussain, are you there?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, doctor. Hi.
After, go on.
Yeah,
Yes.
hi. Actually, Mom and Huda unfortunately couldn't be here.
No problem. Go ahead. Tell me.
Yeah. So, doctor, firstly, I would like to give you some extremely good news regarding my left ear. It feels as though I've got a new ear.
Wonderful to hear that. Thank you.
Lord, thanks a lot. God bless you. Because I didn't know what to do in this pandemic. Where would I go? But after God, you have been a lifesaver. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
And doctor, Mom and Huda they have some questions, and especially after watching your video, they might have some questions. So they would prefer you answering on email if you can later on.
Sure, I will do that, or I will call as well. No problem.
Yeah. And regarding my ear, doctor, would you take a session later on?
Sure, I will talk to you and we'll do a session on that. No problem.
Okay, doctor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else? Is Kushal, are you there? Unmuted. Did you have a question? Khyati from your family, was there a question? Anybody else? Madan Talreja, are you there? You were just unmuted. Okay. Madan, are you there?
Yeah.
Hello? Yes, Kushal, tell me.
Sorry, you were saying Kushal. Actually, Kushal was set it up. It is me, myself, Sudhir Kapoor here.
Yes, that's why I said family. I said I don't know who's there. Please tell me.
Kushal, I have one thing,
Hanji, go ahead. Hanji.
I'm very much thankful to you for this session.
Right.
And as you know, for last 20-25 years, I've been through turbulent times because of the brain, thinking, overthinking, whatever you may say. And
right.
I'm trying to get out of it, and I'm getting out of it.
Right.
Not two things have helped me to get out of it. Of course, your medicine, no doubt, But I would like to say at this point of time, I would like to tell your viewers that the Bhagavad Gita, now I can understand very, very clearly. The Bhagavad Gita is so much relevant to your daily life.
Absolutely. Okay. Yes.
So I'm very much thankful. Your session has brought up that, very clearly now in my mind. It was there in my mind, what you're saying, but now it is it gets reinforced.
Right. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. There's one more interesting question I just read. Nazneen Madan's question is, when you've lost your cool, is it always an old trigger or a building up of recent instances out of your control. So it is always a building up of old triggers. We find reasons in the outside to explain it because our always trying to find cause and effect. That's what its job is, to find a cause and effect. So we look for cause and effect and it's always there, but the build-up is not of the outside, it is of the inner trigger itself. So with this, I think we've covered all the questions. If there are any that I haven't yet covered and you would like, please go ahead and email us, and I will definitely try to answer the questions further. You've been a great audience. I have learned a lot, and it has got me thinking a lot further as to what I would like to read, what I would like to do. Much for joining me on this Saturday. And as we step out into this world, I hope that this would make us aware of our neural circuits, our beautiful brain, and the fact that it is so plastic and so pliable, and that it is in our control to make and break these neural connections, which will change the way we will respond to the world around us. No matter what the challenges are, no matter what it is, the way we are and our immunity can only help us adapt and be immune and come out victorious in the weeks and the days ahead. Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here.